Wednesday, February 7th, 2018. It's now 7 p.m., but we have silent doors behind us, so we can no longer tell when the library closes and it's time for us to start our meeting. But oh, they should. Little placards say we're closed. They haven't finished, but it looks nice from here just because there's so much more visual. If we get tired during the meeting, we can look over there and dream about reading books. Clear vision. So, call to order this regular council meeting of Wednesday, February 7th. It's just 7 p.m. and we have an agenda that was circulated. No additions or deletions that I'm aware of, but I'll just look. None from staff, none from council. All those in favor of adopting the agenda as circulated, I'll say moved by Councillor Seegers and seconded by Councillor Lutz, and everyone was in favor. We have a quorum for council tonight and not a large crowd. We have one councillor that's vacationing in Las Cabos, Mexico, another one that's vacationing in the south of the United States of America, and one that's doing some parental duties in West Sechelt. Our agenda will move directly to the item 3, which was the photo op that we just did before the meeting. And as a delegation this evening, we have Andrew Ambrosi, representing Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design, which is the LEEDs. We often don't actually see the full reference. We talk about the LEED certification, but it's Leadership in Energy, Environmental, and Design. And we've done the presentation, but would you like to speak to the issue? And I think that would be best, yeah. Because then it's on microphone, the video cameras can catch it, and welcome, and thank you for coming here. It's been a long project and a long time getting to full completion and getting everything in order.
Well, thanks for having us again, Mayor Milne and Council. It's a real pleasure to be here one more time. Just as by way of introduction, my name is Andrew Ambrosi. I'm with Maple Reinders. We were the design builder for the project. Our consortium included Urban Systems and Veolia. With me is Michael Norquist with Colliers, who was at the time were MHPM, who were the district's owner's engineer and project manager, and there was also Tetra Tech was involved as the technical representative at that point in time. So we had quite a big team. It's a real pleasure to be here again. Last time I was here, I think we presented 6 industry awards that we received. This is now the 7th accolade for this project. This is probably the best of the group because it really represents a lot of work that went into the project. It was 2 years after the making. That's how long it took to get this award. That's why we're here just today. And I'll just turn it over to Michael, who can speak on what the LEED is all about.
Yes, good evening, and thank you for having us here this evening. And we're very happy to present the plaque for the Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. And for those that may be a little bit unfamiliar with that, it's given out by the Green Buildings Council, or Canadian Green Buildings Council. And the plant has achieved a gold level, which is very high for a treatment plant. The criteria around the LEED Gold revolves around environmental and sustainability, with a lot of focus on energy efficiency. So it's the facility you have is extremely energy efficient compared to previous facilities and like facilities. So it's a great achievement by the overall project team, including the district and the project team, the design builder, as well as because everybody contributes to achieving the points that are necessary for getting the certificate or the gold certification. So well done.
Well, thank you very much for your contributions. And I guess there's 2 councillors here tonight that were through the entire process, as were you. So you know more than most of us just how challenging it was. And we're glad that the bar of certification has finally been reached, and the evidence of that will be a permanent marker that we'll go over in the facility itself. And we do have a fair number of tours still going through and looking at it to just see what was done. And this will be a confirmation when they do arrive that the technical innovation was indeed world-class.
So this really brings our contract with the district to a close. We're very pleased to end this way, that we delivered what we promised in our proposals, but we're not going away. We're not, you can't get rid of us that quickly. There's two initiatives we're working on behind the scenes, and they're quite exciting. One is we're working with UBCO to get a master's program at this facility, because there's some indication that the process that there is takes care of pharmaceuticals. That's the next level of treatment that has to happen nationally. So Seashell could be on the leading edge of that. So we're trying to get we've got proposals into UBCO. There's some funding hurdles we have to get through. There's no cost to the district to do this. It's a private, we're trying to fund it ourselves, and it'll be a master's program. We need cooperation of the operation staff for about a 6-month period potentially. So that's one initiative that we hope to get moving. The other one is Organica. The folks that provide the technology from Hungary are very interested in coming here, and they're doing a lot of research and development. They want to optimize the plant, and they also have some new technology that will increase capacity without any structural changes, and they want to study that. And again, there'll be no cost to the district for that. So there's two initiatives that you may see happening in the next year or so.
Well, thank you for that. We'd be glad to be a pilot for continued work on building out the capacity, especially if there's no cost. And I'm really pleased to hear that the university might be involved to provide the kind of credibility that's necessary for that next step of finding a solution for pharmaceuticals, because we really do need serious scientific approach to it. It's an idea that many people have, but to get the serious work behind it, it's good that the University of British Columbia at Okanagan may have the resources to do that. Right. Thank you for doing that. I thought I signed the final check and the satisfaction of completion about 1.5 years ago. So it shows how long these things take. We're glad you're still here, and thank you for coming back with this presentation, as you say, the 7th in a number over times. But this one is actually documented certification for particular achievements, and I think that's why it's more important.
Okay.
Thank you very much. And if you have ferries to catch, you have no need to sit through this meeting, though it may be relatively short. Moving on to the two proclamations we have this evening, I'll start with the White Cane Week, which is for February 4th to 10th. So we're in the midst of that at the moment. Whereas since 1946, the first full week of February has traditionally been White Cane Week in Canada due to the initiative of the Canadian Council of the Blind. And whereas the objective of White Cane Week is to provide education and awareness of vision loss to British Columbians through a network of special events and hands-on demonstrations throughout the province. And whereas White Cane Week has evolved to reflect the changing situations of the blind community and has begun to emphasize the equal capabilities and talents of people who are blind and partially sighted. And whereas with the province's aging population, all British Columbians need to be better informed about the effects of vision loss and work towards creating supportive, inclusive communities. And whereas the Seashell chapter of the Canadian Council for the Blind will host an information table at the Trail Bay Mall from 10 till 2 p.m. on February 10th, 2018. Now, therefore, I, Bruce Milne, Mayor, do hereby proclaim that February 4th to the 10th, 2018, shall be known as White Cane Week in the district of Seashell. And we have with us the chair of our advisory committee, Accessibility Committee. I was tripping over what that was, and Bill Conway could say a few words.
Thank you very much. Test. There we are. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor and Council. I am the chair of the Accessibility Advisory Committee, but I'm also a provincial director of the Canadian Council of the Blind BC Yukon Division, the largest advocacy group for the visually impaired citizens of Canada. I thank you very much for reading the proclamation tonight, because believe it or not, the one that you read, you're just missing a few lines from it, because it's the very first time in our province that the BC government had recognized White Cane Week, and that's after 46 years it took us to get that recognition. Pardon me, 72 years it took that recognition. As you heard, visually impaired people are involved in a lot of diversity of items, from sports and recreation to advocacy and peer mentoring, and from social to getting together with technology. We're here, there, and everywhere, you may say. We now are in the House of Parliament. We're Caller Coltra as our very first visually impaired minister, to people like me as chair of your local committee. I am personally involved in a lot of initiatives, whether it be international, national, provincial, and local. I'd like just to highlight the provincial one, because you actually mentioned it earlier in your opening comments, and it's regarding the library. We're hoping and we are pushing the Minister of Education to support our library services regarding audiobooks, because we realize that local governments, whether it be Vancouver or here in Sechelt, I'm not separating them all, they're all equal, do not support the audiobook programs properly or equally. We know that as of January 31st, 2018, the CNIB no longer funds the audiobook program. So we now have to push towards local and provincial governments to help support this great initiative. Not only does it assist the visually impaired community to read, but it also assists the print disabled community. So I will not take up much time, and yes, I will be there along with my whiny dog on the 10th in Trail Bay Mall from 10 to 2. We have new information, printed information regarding visual impairments across Canada, from across Canada. And I'll also bring some technical equipment that is available for the visually impaired people. When we look at technical equipment, for example, on Friday, I'll be going to the Vancouver Public Library to test out a new app saying, "Where am I?" And it's my dog Ian, sorry folks, that will enable me to walk through the Vancouver Public Library unescorted, except with my whiny dog. So it's called beacon waving, and beacons will be set up throughout the library to assist me going through the many floors of the library on my own. So that's something new. They have it in Toronto already with stores purchasing beeps or identification markers on this app to assist visually impaired people to tell us where the sales are. In short, that's about it, Mr. Mayor. But I want to leave you all with you and the staff and the media staff, a bookmark with our logo on, or motto. And the motto is, "A lack of sight is not a lack of vision." Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. What a great motto. You've been coming here for many years, and I think this is the third guide dog that's been with us. Maybe she or he hasn't been as well introduced as the others, because the others have all been so well behaved and quiet. This is more vocal. Maybe fitting as you gain a wider voice in the nation as well. Thank you. And moving on to the second proclamation. Whereas February 12th, 2018 is the anniversary of the birth of Charles Darwin in 1809, and whereas his work has made great contributions to the human understanding of our world and the universe we live in, and whereas the anniversary of Darwin's birthday is an appropriate time on which to reflect and celebrate the importance of scientific advancements to all people, or as we say this week, people kind. Now, therefore, I, Mayor Milne, do hereby proclaim that February 12th, 2018 shall be known as Darwin Day in the district of Sechelt. And that's a proclamation that's brought forward each year by the Humanist Society of Canada, Sechelt branch. We've done our appointments, our delegations, our two proclamations, and we move now to item 5 and adoptions of minutes from previous council. We've got a typo in the agenda, previous council meetings. And starting with the minutes from Wednesday, January 17th, 2018, a motion to receive and adopt. Thank you, Councillor Seegers and Councillor Lutz. Any errors or omissions in those minutes? Seeing no indication, we'll move then to, all those in favor of adoption? That's carried. And minutes of the January 31st regular council meeting, in camera. Motion to receive and adopt. Thank you, Councillor Seegers, Councillor Lutz. All those in favor? That's carried. And Wednesday, January 31st, the evening meeting, a motion to receive and adopt the minutes from January 31st. Councillor Lutz and Councillor Seegers seconding. Any errors or omissions in those minutes? That was the short one for the Big Maples. All those in favor of adoption? Thank you. And any business arising from any of those minutes? We issued the building permits for the Big Maples this week, so that was work well done in moving forward on some affordable housing. 30 building permits for 30 units. Moving on to item 7, and we look at the minutes coming from the Planning and Community Development Committee of January 24th, and I'll look for somebody to move receipt and adoption. Thank you for the chair of that committee, Councillor Mueller, and seconded by Councillor Seegers. Are there any of those recommendations that need to be pulled out for further discussion? None. Then we look for a motion to receive and adopt the recommendations 2 through 9. Just want to make sure I got the last one. Through to 9. All those in favor? And that's carried. And that also had development for another 55 units in High Point, 36 units in High Point. Minutes of the Public Works, Parks and Environment Committee meeting of January 24th. Motion to receive and adopt. Thank you, Councillor Seegers and Councillor Lutz. Are there any of those recommendations that need attention from Council tonight? If not, then I'd look for a formal motion for Council to adopt recommendations 2 to 6. All those in favor? None opposed. That's carried. Sorry, I missed 7 and 8. A second motion to receive and adopt recommendations 7 and 8. Thank you, Councillor Seegers and Councillor Mueller. All those in favor? That's carried. Yeah, the tree program is pretty important. We wouldn't want to forget that. Moving on to item 10, which is business items. We have a report from the corporate officer. First, a motion to receive the report, Councillor Mueller and Councillor Lutz, and I'll turn it to Corporate Officer Frank to introduce us to this agreement.
Thank you, Your Worship. As the staff report notes, the current biosolids composting partnering agreement between the District of Sechelt and Salish Soils Inc. Expired on December 31st. Staff is asking that Council consider extending the term for a further year to allow additional time for discussions to take place between both parties, looking towards a long-term plan to treat and dispose of biosolids. A modification agreement has been prepared and is attached, which, if endorsed by Council, will extend the current term to December 31st, 2018.
Thank you. And can you confirm for Council that there are serious discussions going forward and this won't be extended again and again and again?
As far as I know, Your Worship, but the Director of Engineering and Operations is here tonight if you would like to ask him.
If you could give us an update, it would be useful.
Yes, there are discussions again with Salish Soils First Nations and the city or the town of Gibsons. They're continuing those negotiations in-house, as we're not privy to any land negotiations or anything like that. But hopefully we can have their site up and running by at the end of July. That's what we're hoping. But again, we aren't privy to those negotiations. However, to make sure that we have our biosolids being treated, it's important that we extend the agreement.
Okay. Any questions from Council? Then could I have a councillor move the second recommendation, that biosolids composting partnering agreement between the District of Sechelt and Salish Soils and Company be modified and that the mayor and corporate officer be authorized to execute the necessary modification agreement. Thank you, Councillor Lutz and Councillor Mueller that time. And all those in favor? None opposed, that's carried. And we have, related to the same topic, item 10.2, and I look for somebody to make the recommendation to receive the report. Councillor Seegers, thank you, and Councillor Lutz, second. All those in favor? So much quicker with only 4 councillors. We should consider this. It would make elections easier too, right? You can only really concentrate your efforts. And I'd look to the corporate officer to speak to this.
Thank you, Your Worship. So this before you is a proposed sublease agreement between the District of Sechelt and Salish Soils to extend the current sublease of the land on Dusty Road that Salish Soils Inc. occupies for the purpose of the biosolids composting. The current sublease expired on December 31st, 2017. Again, a modification agreement is attached that if council endorses will extend the term to December 31st, 2018.
Thank you. Any questions or clarifications from council? I look for somebody to move the recommendation. Thank you, Councillor Mueller, Councillor Seegers. All those in favor? That's carried. And that's for the use of the Dusty Road site. And then moving to item 10.3, we have the Neighborhood Association Liaison appointments and a brief report from the Executive Assistant Carrie Ann Polson, who's not with us tonight, and it just outlines the routine appointments for January to July 2018. Receipt for information, thank you. Councillor Seegers seconding. All those in favor? That's carried. And I'll just point out 2 things before we pass over this. One, we do not have the newly formed and active Tillicum Bay Neighborhood Association on here yet. And we've also discovered that there was a policy put forward in the early part of the previous council regarding the way community associations would interact with the council and the District of Sechelt in terms of registration, formal notification that they were in good standing with the Societies Act, and information regarding their executive. And we need to take a quick look at that and make sure we have the right relationship with the various associations. And also I'm realizing as we grow larger and neighborhood associations then subdivide because they work best at certain sizes, we may want to think about our liaisons in geographic terms rather than with particular associations. So we think through how to best divide 10,000 people among 7 councillors and rotate them geographically. And if you're in an area that has an association, you would of course link with them. And if you're not, then it would change. So we'll think that one through in the next while. And we are setting up a meeting in the spring, I think it's in March, with the presidents and vice presidents, or 2 representatives from each of the neighborhood associations, and that'll give us a chance to talk out loud with them about this. Moving from that to item 11, and I see the most wonderful thing about having only 4 councillors, councillors' reports. Can I start on my left with Councillor Seegers?
Thank you. So I looked back over this and realized there actually were a few things happening in the last number of weeks. It was actually January 17th when we had our last council meeting. So on the 20th, we had a library board meeting, and we're coming up to the AGM. AGM will be happening in 2 weeks. There'll be some members will be leaving from the board, and some new ones will be coming on board. Then on the 24th, Sechelt Hospital expansion renovation tour. It's fascinating to see what they've done with that old part of the hospital. They've designed it so that all of the treatment rooms and where the doctors will be working look out on the window side of the building, and all of the storage are on the inside, so they don't need windows. And they've got spaces for 5 different specialists to come up from the Lower Mainland to do visits and treatments here with patients. So I talked to Lauren Tyndall, the director, and said, so you're going to take some pictures and show them what this looks like so that they want to come? She's considering doing that. A number of us attended a derelict vessel planning session with Sea Shalt Nation and SCRD, and the Regional Economic Development Annual Plan presentation. And then all of us spent a full day in a strategic planning session and a special council meeting. And finally, the District of Sechelt was the host for the quarterly seniors planning table meeting in this room. And I want to commend our planning staff, Angela Letman and Aaron Thompson. They did they presented information on the age-friendly plan and the spectrum of care. And it was very, very well received, and members on the way out actually commented on how well the session went and the information that was presented. So I want to thank staff for that. Thank you.
Thank you for your report. And Councillor Mueller?
Yes, thank you. Like Councillor Seegers, I attended the strategic planning session that we had last week. It was I think one of the best ones that we've done. And I wanted to thank staff for putting that together, because it really, I think, in my mind, coalesced what we have been doing and put it into perspective in a new way. Hadn't thought of that. It was good. It was a good session. I also wanted to report to council today that I've had a meeting with our new director of planning, and as well in that meeting was a former director. So it was, I guess, part of, you might say, part of the the handoff.
Transition?
Yeah, the transition, thank you. Orientation was what I meant, but I wasn't finding the word for some reason. And yeah, that was the main things that I was up to. I don't believe I reported that before, but we're going to be doing these meetings more regularly around the agenda, just to make sure that we're setting it in a way that makes sense for the work that we have. Thank you.
Thank you for that report, and I'm so glad that people somewhat younger than me also forget words once in a while. And Councillor Lutz.
Thank you. Attended most of the meetings that the other councillors have talked about, and I found it really interesting at the opening of the renovation at the hospital. I truly can remember when in the 60s, that part of the hospital was the main working and patient care part of the hospital. And to see that change was really interesting. At the time of the original opening, we just thought it was the most beautiful, incredible hospital, and it certainly got outdated quickly. I also had the privilege, honor of being on the Talk to Your Local Government in place of Mayor Milne, and Mr. Eckford was very kind to us. With only 2 guests there, we had a lot of time to talk, so that was interesting. Tomorrow, it's back to the SCRD for more meetings. And I would just like to take a moment to recognize that this week we lost Dave Barrett. And he had many contributions to this province over a lot of years, including his 3 years as the premier of our province. And I just want to acknowledge the great work that was done by that government at that time. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that report. I will just mention one activity that I was involved in the last while that other councillors weren't, and that was to go to Richmond to attend it's called a Local Government Leadership Academy, but it's put on by UBCM. And there were 3 sessions in that were useful to our work, or that I'd like to report on. One of them was an update on the newly emerging position of the province on cannabis use. And there was an opportunity to have a presentation and questions from the executive director of a provincial agency which is developing all of the materials and the policies for cannabis use in the province, and it's non-facetiously called the Joint Commission on Cannabis Use. The second issue that was very important was a presentation by Elections BC on elections financing, and I'll be glad to share anything I learned there with other councillors or anyone in the community who's thinking about standing as a candidate in the upcoming elections in the fall of this year. And there have been quite a few changes to especially the financing side of elections, and that's going to be a positive impact on, I hope, on elections, on democracy, and on all of our efforts to have a good council here in the next term. And related to that was a third session that was called Women in Politics, and it was a session that was facilitated by Josie Osborne from Tofino, the mayor of Tofino, and four very powerful and strong-speaking women from the federal system, and from the local system, from the regional district system, and one campaign manager, the campaign manager for Lisa Helps. It was a very informative session and really helped a lot of us understand if we want diversity on councils. And tonight we actually have gender balance, so that's another reason to have only four on the council. But it's very important to reach out and make sure that councils are inviting and inclusive places, and that our partisanship and the way we practice politics is open to all and not seen as a barrier. So that was quite important. And as I finish that note, I'd just like to mention that many of you will have seen notices in the paper or in Facebook and social media about a campaign school that's being organized on the Sunshine Coast, and I would encourage anyone to follow that up too, just to get a bit more of an understanding of what it might be entailed, and to learn from those who have already made the transition into local government. And the SCRD report, we've had a bit of a finish. We finished up the first round of the budget, so that's sort of on hold, and we'll be meeting again on the budget in the first week of March, while staff does work to finalize some of the numbers and see what we approved. This Thursday, there will be an interesting board meeting because the board of directors will have the first real opportunity to understand better why the District of Sechelt passed its resolution asking for supply and storage to be the highest priority at the regional board rather than drought management or other kinds of water issues. And we expect that to be interesting and well attended by the public. And I'd also like to say, as the SCRD chair, I attended a meeting also in Richmond just before the local government conference on electoral area forums. And it was electoral area directors from around the province, plus chairs of regional districts. And it gave me a very good insight into the ways that regional directors work, and sort of explained in some ways why they end up in a complicated position where they're doing much more in their community than their jurisdiction or constitutional mandate actually provides for. Because they're caught between the province, they don't actually have a local government to work with. And so what I saw in that room was a lot of people that were very active in the community, doing much more than they were elected to do, but doing it because there was no one else in the community to fill those roles. So I think that happens on the coast as well. You'll notice that Frank Morrow from Area A is sitting on the Harbour Authority, and he's active in derelict boats and all sorts of things that we wouldn't do because we have staff. They don't have staff to do that because the regional districts only have functions. Anyways, that was useful, and that would conclude my report from the regional district. Moving on to item 12.1, we have council correspondence, and I look for a motion to receive. Councillor Seegers and Councillor Mueller seconding. All those in favor? And are there any items there that we'd like to pull out for particular discussion? Many of the issues we've talked about, from health to provincial regulations to tax sharing on cannabis and water. And if there's no discussion of correspondence, I'll look for a motion to adjourn. Thank you, Councillor Seegers and Councillor Mueller. All those in favor, none opposed, and the meeting's adjourned at 7:34. And we